So I'm in the season of my life where um, I'm really aware of the fact that I am learning God's character through joy now rather than sorrow. And what I mean by that is that I'm experiencing moments with God where we're getting close in joyful moments, in peaceful moments, rather than getting close over like sorrowful moments and traumatic moments. I think anybody who has a relationship with God is aware of the fact, and when I say God, I'm talking about the God of the Bible, the Father of Jesus Christ. I know that there's so many differing opinions on the God that I consider the God of the universe, the God of the Bible, because I think there's a huge misconception about, is he a good God? And if he is a good God, why does he allow these things? He seems like he's only an angry God. He seems like he's inaccessible to me because of this and this and this. And I can say, as a person who, by the grace of God, has had the opportunity to take the time to explore those things with him, to explore him with him, to learn him, both by his leading and by my choosing, because every relationship is a two-way street. I want to sit here before you and acknowledge the fact that, like, he is a God of wrath, but he's also a God of great love too. And he is a God of, like, traumatic stories, but he's also a God of redemption within those stories. So, I think, like, right now, that's how I'm learning to experience the Lord. Like, I'm learning to be happy and still think about him. I'm learning to, like, feel peace and yet still pursue that relationship with him, when so much of our relationship before, I mean, he's really dealt with me in the kindest ways. I mean, very straightforward, but still in the kindest, most gentlest ways. Like, as I was healing, as I needed accountability, as I needed to be led and pulled away from certain things, and as I needed to be convicted and brought aware of, like, my own habits, my own behaviors, the things that I've learned in my past. Like, to me, he has been a God of wrath, in that he has not allowed me to stand before him with some of these, like, negative, unhealthy kind of backwards traits that I had. But he's been so gentle in the way that even though I still possess those things, he did still allow me to stand before him, and we worked through them, and he healed those things within me just by being him, just by being so loving, by being so honest, and not leaving, sticking by my side. So me thinking, being in that season in my life, it brings to mind, like, all of the relationships that I've had in my past before that were just really so terrible. And they weren't terrible because of the people that I was in the relationship with. Although, and I was going to say, I don't think they were terrible because of me either, but yet I can look back and I can see, like, in all majority of the romantic partnerships that I've had, and even some of my friendships, like, there obviously have been things that both people have done in any relationship that just set things off and cause problems, because we're imperfect human beings. Like, we're always going to disappoint each other. I'm really convinced at this point in my life that I'm unable to have good relationships if God is not in the center of them. So when I reflect on all of my past relationships where God was not at the center, it's like I see these patterns of, essentially, like, me being in relationships with people that were very similar to people that I knew as a child, or that exhibited traits of people that I knew as a child, that also had the same kind of generational traumas as me, basically. Essentially, what I'm saying is that every relationship I've ever been in before in the past has been a direct mirror to me of what it was that I was familiar with, and yet what it was that I had to heal, that I hated, but because I knew it so well, I was just so attracted to it, and yet I was aware it was so bad for me. And so I wanted to run, but I wanted to stay at the same time. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted to play with fire, but I was pissed when I got burnt. But I knew it would happen because it was just, all these patterns, all these things, really kind of all these sinful ways that I think relationships are both viewed and participated in at this point in time, and even in the past, when we don't allow God to heal us from the inside out, both from things that we've learned and experienced from our family, but also from things that we've learned and experienced by our own choices as we've grown older. So, with all of that in mind, as I'm thinking about, oh my gosh, like every single relationship I've been in, my God, it's had some sort of function or dynamic about it that ultimately, as I get deeper and further into relationship with you, I recognize that you are making me aware of that and you're changing that within me. And I welcome it, and it's not easy, but for me, it is very necessary because I want that. I want to become, I do not want to just be forever for the rest of my life. So then take into account that yesterday I saw the movie Wuthering Heights with my friend Jody here in the state that I live in. And I've never read the book. The book was initially written by Emily Bronte in I think it was 1892, the late 1800s. She's a very well-known author, similar, actually, maybe it was written by Charlotte Bronte. Charlotte and Emily are sisters. She was one of those authors that was popular around the time that Jane Austen was also writing, although I think there's like a 30 to 40 year gap between them. Jane Austen is the writer of Pride and Prejudice and Sensibility. You get the point of what I'm saying. Just well-known people in America's history. Are they even American? I don't know. So Wuthering Heights it's sort of like a play on Romeo and Juliet, in that the focus is essentially star-crossed lovers who just never get on the same page. And even when they try to get on the same page, like, it ends up not ending well for them, and like, again, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like every relationship I've ever been in, and then it brought me to like this thought that, like, God, I'm praising you that even when I was toxic and I just ran away, you know what I mean? When I just ghosted, because I did do that, when stuff would get too much or whatever, like I would just dip out. Or I would lash out, and it would just be so bad. But I'm still like praising God, like, thank you, Lord, for not ever like allowing me to choose these relationships that you didn't really want me to be in. Because there were also so many too that I was aware, like, God does not want me to be here. Like, once I started to get to know the Lord, I still was struggling with relationships. I was still like trying to figure out how to navigate these. And so there were still there were still a couple that, I was aware, like, God, I know you don't want me to be here, but also I don't really know how to get out. Like, I don't know how to stay away from this. I don't know how to choose something differently at this point in my life. I don't possess the ability. I don't possess the wisdom to step away from the situation that I know is not good for me, because at this point in time, it's so familiar that I crave it. I want it. Like, this is exactly what lights me up. And just in the same way that it lights me up, it burns me to the ground too. So after we saw that movie, I was like nearly, I mean, it was really sad, but it was also sickening in a way, because it just, again, it reminded me of like, oh my God, like all the situations, all the choices that I made in the past and all the situations I was in. And I'm so thankful that God led me away from them. And so I wrote a poem. I wrote a poem about star-crossed lovers. I wrote a poem about choosing love, even whenever it seems contrary to what we actually want. I've titled this poem When Flames Match. It is a poem about the best and the worst kind of love. Okay. In other lives, I'm positive my most dangerous fires by you were kept. In other lives, I'm positive we drained rivers to give the other their last sip. In other lives, I'm positive we've burnt and built bridges just for you. just for you, dedicated. Where the world had no color without the other, without you. But in this life, we've learned to love each other better than that. In this life, we choose to love as we forget. Our greatest, most transformational, world-changing love story yet. My last dying wish for us, my magnificent flame, may we flee from love's gruesome bonds by remembering to forget. It was important to me to talk about forgetting because I know so much of my life now as a woman of God, as a woman, period, as a person committed to becoming and again getting to know the Lord in joy, it requires me to forget. It requires me to forget a lot of the old ways that I used to operate and pick up all the new ones that God is teaching me. It requires me to forget all of the star-crossed lover situations. It requires me to forget them. It requires me to no longer mourn for them and grieve for them because I'm aware that I was never really meant to be with them forever, and they were never really meant to be with me forever. This season of my life now, it requires me to forget so much of what I knew in order so that I can learn something new. And it requires me to forget my old life, essentially. And I really think that, like, my old way of operating, and I've learned at this point in time in my life and my relationship with God, that so much of our relationship with Him really is like forgetting the old ways, like laying them down, turning around and learning something new. And I know that it sounds like so easy for me to say that, like those words just like breeze through my mouth. But I think if anything, we can even look at our parents and the way that they chose to live our life and see that testament there that it's hard to change. We can look at our grandparents and see how they lived and how it affected our parents and how it affected how we have lived up until this point. And we can be aware even at that point in time, it's very hard to change. It's very hard to forget. It's very hard to lay the old things down. It's very hard to abandon what you knew in order so you can learn something new. And yet I realize, like, God is like the God of new. He's like the God of mercies. He's literally like the God of a fresh start, a fresh slate. And yet with that being the case, our participation is required in that. I can't go to class and listen to a lecture, or I can't go to class and sit in a lecture, but not listen, not take notes, not study, and like this information is transferred to me by osmosis. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't work that way. It requires our participation. It requires me to learn something new. And particularly when we've learned something the wrong way, I think it's even harder than to forget that, to abandon that thought. To abandon that way of thinking, to abandon that habit because it's become a habit. It's what we learned then. It's how we operated within that for so long. It's how we did this this certain way for so long. So to learn something new is difficult. I mean, you hear it all the time. Can't keep teaching old dogs new tricks. Or like when old people talk about technology. Heck, even when me as a 30-year-old woman talks about like, oh my gosh, like I hate the way the world is so technologically oriented and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's hard for us to as humans, I think, like maybe, a lot of us like to travel and see new places and experience new things. But at the end of the day, the way that we function, the way that we think, the way that our heart views things, the way that we feel about certain convictions and certain behaviors of other people and of ourselves, it's very hard for us to be convinced, like, I need to learn a new way to do this. And I need to forget about that in order so I can learn this new way. And I might have to leave this person. I might have to leave this job. I might have to do something new. I might have to make like a big decision in order for me to like really get through this. But I'm so confident in the fact that this journey with God is meant to be lived every day new, compounding upon each day to form like such a solid foundation, such a solid relationship, that at this point in my life, I am willing to make those decisions. I'm willing to set things aside and pick up anew. And yet I cannot sit here and not acknowledge the fact of how foreign that really is. And yet, just because it's foreign doesn't mean it's bad. It's good. It's just new. So anyways, that is my video for today. I hope you have enjoyed it. I hope you are not laughing or cringing at my poem. I am aware of the fact that perhaps the way that I think and communicate and do things in my life is obviously it's unique and it's different than anyone, because you're different than me and I'm different from you, and that's the beauty of life. But I'm also aware, like at this point in time, a lot of the decisions that I've made in my life are sort of, not very conventional, or don't really follow a status quo or a box. So I understand that it's very possible I could be perceived in that way as well, just in general. But I also don't really care, because this is my YouTube channel and this is my life, and I'm going to post what I want. And if you're here until the end, I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you have a great Valentine's Day. I don't know if I'll be posting this on Valentine's Day, but it is Valentine's Day when I'm filming it. Tomorrow is a Sunday. I hope you have a great start to your week. And I pray that you run into opportunities this week where you have some sort of epiphany about something that really leads you into a deeper understanding of this season that you're in, or what God is saying to you, or what God is trying to gift you, or what God is trying to pull out of you, in order that you may continue becoming and growing and radiating the love of the Lord and the abundance and the new fresh mercies that are in him each and every single moment of every single day. Goodbye. I love you. Have a great day.